And welcome to a very special Off the Couch. I'm Dr. Greg Cason. I'm here with producer Brian Gomez, and I am a psychologist where we talk about psychology in everyday life, but today is special because I have an icon, a Hollywood icon, and an icon in the world of mental health. And we're going to talk about some of these special things. I'm here with actress Ruta Lee. Hi, Ruta.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Dr. Greg. And believe me, when it comes to specializing in mental health, I know that I'm in need of it.
Well, Ruta, I want to talk to you. Here, I'm going to introduce you to Ruta's a Canadian-American actress. You were born in Canada, Montreal.
Born in Montreal, Canada, and have retained my citizenship, which is kind of nice. So I have not just dual citizenship, but triple citizenship, because I also have citizenship in Lithuania, and that comes in so handy.
Well, actually, yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about the Lithuania story, because that's really a big key thing. But Ruta is not only an actress, but a philanthropist, and she's renowned for her versatile performances in film and television and her dedicated work in mental health with an organization we'll talk about called the Thalians. Her career started in the 1950s. It spanned 7 decades until today, and you were just on RuPaul's Drag Race just a few days ago.
Oh my God. I was just so jealous of all those beautiful queens that are on the show, because those lovely bitches are prettier than I am.
It's crazy. Brian and I were talking about that driving in, about how they can transform from rather dowdy men into really miraculous women. Yeah, you have a star on the Walk of the Hollywood Fame in front of the Groman's Chinese Theater, where you worked as a cashier and a candy girl and an usherette, which is amazing.
It's a funny story.
And you've been in over 50 films and 100 television shows. Many I watched as a kid. I knew exactly who you were as a child. I mean, as a child and as an adult because of your career.
Let me correct you about... I didn't do 100 films. I did maybe 20 films.
Oh.
But I've done at least 2,500 television shows that I guest starred in.
Wow.
And that's quite a difference from 100.
Yes. That is...
I'm very proud of that.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruta Lee. So,
hello again. I'm so happy to be with you all, and I'm especially happy to be with my 2 boys here.
Oh, well, thank you. It's good to be with you.
We're thrilled to have you.
So, born Ruta Mary Kilmonis in 1935 in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and destined for a life in the spotlight. And that was true. Your parents were Lithuanian immigrants.
They surely were. My mother's parents gleaned the money from I don't know what to give my father the money to come over and sign a contract. Couldn't get into the United States. The quotas were closed, which left Mexico, South America, Canada. And of course, Canada was right next door to United States, where everybody knew that the streets were paved with gold. And so what did you do but come to the closest? And he got a contract working in the wheat fields of Saskatchewan for a year, and he did, and saved his money, and then brought my mother over. And fortunately, I was born in Canada a few years later. And eventually, my mother, who was the furthest thing from a showbiz mom.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we always think of loud, yakking kind of women that are showbiz mamas. She was the furthest thing from it. But she knew nothing about theater, which was the likely place for me to go from Montreal. New York was right across the border. But she didn't know about theater, but she did see movies. And she did see Shirley Temple. And she would say, "My daughter do that, just the way Shirley Temple do." And so movies was the place for my mother to take me. And when they were finally permitted a quota, which was hard to get into the United States after World War II, all the visas were going to displaced persons from all over the world. And we somehow miraculously, I think it was her prayers that got us to California, where I went to Immaculate Heart High School, and then I went to Hollywood High, and had a very good time, and then wound up at UCLA. And what a fabulous life God has given me in these special United States of ours. I don't think people who are not from other places recognize how blessed and lucky they are to be in the United States.
I think you're so right, Ruta. I mean, and what you really illustrate is the immigrant story and how someone can come from nothing, your parents, and they fought and struggled, and your dad working in the wheat fields, and then your mother believing in you, I guess, giving you dance lessons.
Yes.
I mean, just incredible, because you're an incredible dancer.
I owe my whole career and anything that I've ever done to my kindergarten teacher, because my mother was a working woman and so was my dad. They were tailors. Both my parents, they became tailors. Said, your child, Mary, my mama, is a little different from the kids that I have in my classes. She just has more pizzazz, more spunk, more something. Give her lessons. Give her music lessons. Give her piano lessons. Oh, God, how I hated my piano lessons. Give her dance lessons. And she did. And so anything that's ever happened is thank you, Mrs. Jackson, my kindergarten teacher. And parents out there, if your kindergarten teacher says something about your kid, don't just slough it off. Take it seriously.
Well, you're talking about another peeve of mine is when we put down teachers, because I think they do God's work. I think it's so important what they do.
I think it's the toughest job in the world.
Yeah.
Scientific achievement is one thing. They raise the kids that make the scientific achievements.
They do.
And it's thanks to them.
Yeah. And you had one who singled you out, which really made a lot of sense. I think that star quality was there from very early on.
I think I was a show-off, Greg. I think I just loved doing hellos. And my mother said that there wasn't a stranger I ever met. I always kissed every bum lying in the street or anything else, and climbed every set of stairs and knocked on the door and said hello to whoever it was. So I obviously liked people. I liked making them smile. I certainly loved making them laugh. I like making them cry, too. That's kind of nice. And to think that I get to do all that on stage and then get a check at the end of the week. Wow!
Well, that's even really interesting, because last time on our podcast, we talked about the dancer personality, and that really dancers seem to have this really special personality, more extroversion, more openness to new experience, less neurosis than the general public.
But greater tolerance for pain.
Very greater.
Oh, dear God, to be a dancer means you are in pain all of your life. You've pulled one thing or another, or you've stretched too hard, or you didn't stretch enough, or you've tried too many PK turns, Mm-hmm. I was really too lazy to be a really good dancer, because it took effort and effort and effort. And if things didn't come easily to me, to this day, Greg, I have to admit it, I'm not interested in doing it.
Oh.
If I have to read a lot of instructions, forget it. If I can't do it automatically, to hell with it.
Well, thank goodness you're talented and intelligent, because it seems like a lot of stuff does come easily to you.
Oh, thank you, Lord.
But that brings us to Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
My first job.
Your very first job, and
well, in movies, my first job.
In movies,
yeah.
But as I said to you once before when we were not on the podcast, but I said, you really stood out to me in that movie. It's like this light was on you. And there were 7 brides. I mean, There were 7 women and you were one. And when it's just almost from the first scene, you just lit up.
Well, thank you. That is so nice to hear. It was such a fabulous treat Seven Brides, and I don't think that I realized it at the time. And boys, they were the days, this was the mid-50s, when we worked 6 days a week, not 5 with a 2-day weekend. It was 6 days a week. And to think that you had the one day off, and that was the one day you got to wash your hair or do whatever you needed to do, although they did it all at the studio. But what a great treat to go to work and do a bar every morning. By bar, I'm saying B-A-R-R-E, the ballet bar, where you do the pliés and the extensions and the lifts and the kicks and all of that good stuff. And I would do the bar, and our choreographer was Michael Kidd. Michael Kidd, one of the best on the face of this earth, you know. And there he was, and he was fabulous because, first of all, he put up with me, because there I was looking around and saying, what on earth are those people doing with me here? I can't begin to keep up with some of the best dancers in America that were all in this movie. But Michael Kidd had a great sense of humor, and he would say, instead of 3 chassés to the right and a piqué turn to the left, he would say, give me 3 of those scrape-alongs and one of those corkscrew jobs.
Perfect.
And so, therefore, we laughed all through every rehearsal. It was one big laugh. Pee your pants laugh, because he was just so funny and so wild and so wonderful. And so, wow, I never knew what not having fun on a set was, because I learned right then and there that good directors, good choreographers, good assistant directors make it as pleasant as possible, in spite of the fact that they've got time to worry about. And by the way, Seven Brides is very interesting. Very few people know this. This was when CinemaScope first came in.
Oh.
So we shot Seven Brides in 2 processes, in widescreen and in CinemaScope. So every scene that you see, whether you see it in widescreen or CinemaScope, is a little different. One is spread a little wider, the others are a little closer in and more cut off. Isn't that interesting?
I didn't know that. I didn't know. That's really interesting to know that. But tell me about, talking about dancing in Seven Brides, tell me about the costume mishap. I read that there was a costume mishap that really showed your professionalism. I'll read it. It's that when they were doing one of the energetic, you had a wardrobe malfunction when your dress tore down the middle. And they said rather than stopping, you kept dancing, holding your dress together with one hand, still trying to perform the choreography. And the entire crew was laughing, like you were saying, and it was a testament to your professionalism.
Are you sure that was me?
Oh, maybe it wasn't. I will have to go back.
I'll take credit for it. What the hell? I don't remember that happening. The only mishap I ever really had wardrobe, well, I've had a lot of mishaps, but one happened as I was running across Sunset Boulevard in front of Hollywood High to catch a bus. And in those days, we wore those great big full skirts with acres of petticoats underneath. And the whole thing was attached at my waist, and it came undone, and it fell to the floor, leaving me exposed with just my panties, standing in the middle of Sunset Boulevard with a big petunia of petticoats around me that looked like a flower, and I was standing on a pedal. Did anybody throw money? No. Oh, but I've got to find out who that happened to.
I'll go back and look.
Okay.
I apologize if it wasn't you.
Oh, but I love it. It's a great story. I'll use it.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one. But it just, because one thing that really stood out for me was your professionalism, that you just worked, you did everything, you showed up, you were good. You look like someone who hit their mark that people could depend on.
That I take, I don't take credit for myself, but I do, in that I've always been a real pro, and I think that's why I work so much for so many people, because I didn't carry a lot of extraneous baggage of, she's temperamental, or she has to have this, or blah, 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 or she doesn't know her lines. Damn it, I came into work ready to go. Always tried to be a little early, didn't always make it, but always aimed for that. And I learned so much along the way without realizing that I was being taught. That's the part that was so wonderful.
There you go.
My first job, really, that I got paid for, and that I got my union card on, my SAG card, Screen Actors Guild, that is, people, was working for Burns and Allen.
Oh, really? George
Burns and Gracie Allen were the biggest stars in television. Of course, not everybody even had a television in those days, But I worked for them, and they had a wonderful series that went on for a long time. I worked for them twice, in fact. And it was so nice to be this little youngster, coming into a big, huge, wonderful stage at CBS, and have these lovely people include me in events that they had coming up at their home.
Yes.
George Burns and Gracie Allen would invite me to, even though I was still a youngster and not of drinking age, I would be invited to sit at their beautiful parties, and that they had, and their pool would be covered with beautiful floating flowers and gorgeous lamps all over, strung up for the holiday or whatever it was. And I learned so much about comedy timing. Stop and think about George Burns and his cigar, even as 100-year-old, how he took his sweet old time on everything that he ever did, and gave people time to think and laugh about what he was doing.
In fact, I think that both of them, Gracie too, they were a dynamic duo of comedy. It was pretty amazing.
Our young people watching today haven't the vaguest idea of what I'm talking about.
Do you, Brian?
No, but it says a lot about your professionalism that even as a young adult, they still invited you to those types of parties, and to have amongst their peers, and it just says so much about you and your work.
I learned something very important one day at one of their parties. Being young and foolish, I was standing talking to a very nice gentleman who was older and kind enough to spend time with me. And in walked down the lovely stairs into the patio a real Zelda. She was loud and brash, and she was wearing something quite awful, and she had orange-colored hair. And I turned to the gentleman and I said, "Oh, my God, do you believe what just walked down the stairs?" And he said, "Yes, it's my sister." And I said, "Oh, do you believe how attractive she is?"
Good save.
But that taught me a lesson. Unless you have something kind to say, keep your mouth shut.
Very nice. Very nice. Actually, these are great lessons about life. So thank you. But I don't know what direction to go in, because dynamic duos of comedy. You were also with Ricky and Lucy. You and Lucy became a big friend of yours.
Yes. I'm so grateful to God for all the beautiful people that He sent my way. And at the top of the list are two great comedians. And one, of course, is Phyllis Diller, and the other, of course, is the fabulous Lucille Ball.
Two of the best.
I met Lucille Ball for the first time at a racetrack.
No.
At Del Mar.
No.
She and Ricky used to go to the races and had a box there and so on and so forth. And a fellow that I was seeing once in a while for dinner, I was very young too, had to fly down to Mexico for something, to Tijuana, and then we flew back to Del Mar, and I thought, oh boy, am I in tall cotton here, And I met Lucy for the first time, and she fell in love with what I was wearing, which was a big polka-dotted full skirt, with a little black top. And she always loved polka dots. And so she kind of kept me in mind all the time. And then later on, I did all of her shows one after another, and did different shows for them, even after Ricky was no longer on the scene, and she was married to a comic who was very funny and marvelous. But wow, what a treat to have her on, in my life.
Did she steal the dress look from you? Because didn't she wear a polka dot dress?
Amazingly enough, she wore polka dot dresses all the time. But she loved what I wore all the time, and she loved my jewelry. I don't like little itsy bitsy jewelry. I like big pieces. And in fact, most interesting that we're talking about Lucy and her borrowing my jewelry, because these earrings that I'm wearing right now go with a beautiful set that has the turquoise and the tourmaline and whatnot stones in it. And she would borrow that from me.
Oh.
And I would have to call her 6 months later and say, "Hey, girlfriend, can I borrow back what you borrowed from me?" She'd forget, naturally. Yeah. I don't blame her. I'd forget too. But, she was a good pal. And, of course, little Lucy is still a friend, and we see her.
Lucy Arnaz.
Arnaz.
Her daughter.
She lives in Palm Springs.
Oh, wow, cool.
And I have a home there, so it's very nice. As did Lucy.
I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. The Palm Springs was very much her métier. She really loved living there and being there, and she liked it.
Well, you were really part of Hollywood royalty. I mean, it's very apparent.
I grew up with it.
Yeah, you grew up with it.
I mean, the fact that I got to say hello and make friends of some of these people, I wasn't the royalty, but I was right there, the handmaidens, hanging in with the royalty.
I don't know. I think you were, well, I mean, I'm not going to argue, but I do think certainly we consider you royalty. So that's
Thank
nice.
You.
And I do know what you mean. You hung with the biggest,
the
biggest, and the
there's
best
my
stars.
girlfriend.
Oh yeah, Phyllis Diller. Yeah, and she's absolutely. Is that? Yeah,
that's Tony Holt Kramer that I did 5 years of Talk of the Town with. That's
wow.
in the background there. But Phyllis was a good friend, and we were with Phyllis for dinner. Alex Trebek was a good friend of hers. I introduced them originally.
Really?
And we were at Phyllis's house for dinner. Debbie Reynolds was there.
Who I love,
Phyllis,
too. You're a good friend of yours.
Course, yeah. And of course Alex and his beautiful wife. And we all had dinner together just about 2 weeks. Speak of the devil. My handsome Alex.
It's the two of you from High Rollers. Which I watched as a kid and loved that show.
Good for you.
So I mean,
I did it for 2 years, and I didn't do the nighttime show because the producer's wife was Elaine.
Not
Stewart.
Elaine Stewart.
Elaine Stewart.
Stewart.
Thank you. That's my friend Ronnie.
Thank
back
you,
there
Ronnie.
that remembers everything. She's young. She's not an oldie like I am. And so she got to do the show. And she was boring as baby poop, but a darling girl as far as that goes. But there you go.
Well, you were not as boring as baby poop. In fact, I was watching one episode, July 4th, I think 1970, I can't remember, 5. I can't remember the exact year, but you had there was a mishap that I witnessed.
Yes.
So I know it was you.
Oh, yes. yes. Alex or Johnny, whatever his name, I've forgotten now, who did the introductions. And here's Miss Ruta Lee, and out I came, and I stood and posed prettily, and a boom fell and hit me on the head.
Yeah.
And I sort of went out, and Alex said, "Boy, she'll do anything to get attention."
It was great. I mean, I watched the entire episode, and he kept saying, are you, he kept making jokes, but kept checking in with you.
He became one of my really dear friends, and we weren't joined at the hip every day. We didn't talk every day. If we saw each other once a month, that was plenty. But then when I knew his first wife very well, Elaine, she's still one of my best friends, and I know his current widow, She became an altogether. I just had dinner with her 2 nights ago. So it was a wonderful relationship. And the nice thing was that Alex, thank God, before he went to meet his maker, did the foreword to my book.
Oh, yes.
That's why we had the picture of him on the back cover. And
yes.
And what a guy. What a great guy. Wild sense of humor. And
which you would never know from watching TV, because he's very conservative.
You got to know it a little bit on his show on Jeopardy, but he had and he could do any accent. His father was Russian, and his mother of French descent, and so he could do any accent, and he could do the wonderful East Indian accent better than anybody I've ever known, and he would do jokes so beautifully. And to have him do the foreword was really a great blessing.
Well, he obviously adored you as well.
He did, and you know, he was Mr. Fix-It. Here was a guy, maybe it was his Russian father and that kind of upbringing, but if you had a tile out on the roof, he will find a tile, he will repair it, he'll do it. If your plumbing wasn't working right, not good. If the gas stove wasn't right, he could fix it. And he proved it all when one of the local hardware stores in the valley right near Laurel Canyon, where we both lived, went out of business or was going out of business. He bought out everything that they had in that store. Every size screw, every size nail, every ratchet, everything is wound up in Alex's garage.
Well, that's very cool. In fact, do you know who Alex Trebek is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, he was
surprised.
He for years was the host of Jeopardy, but he also did, of course, this other show, High Rollers, and but you were on lots of amazing game shows. I mean, this was such a heyday for game shows. Match Game, you were on Hollywood Squares.
You name it.
What's My Line?
Yeah.
I mean, you were on like the best of the best game shows.
I did, and I think people hired me because first I'm a very high energy person.
Yeah.
And I bring that to whatever I'm doing, which helps. And I enjoyed every one of the games. I enjoyed playing them too.
Yeah, that's what's very special.
Excuse
I think,
me, folks.
I miss the old game shows because those were a lot of fun. You just had fun watching TV back then, and you know, I actually really enjoyed them. But another show I really enjoyed, and we're talking just personal to me, I loved The Twilight Zone.
You and me both.
Yes.
And every star in the world did a Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
Just amazing. Robert Redford.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. Name anybody. They all, at some point or other, were on the Twilight Zone. And I loved the segment that I did.
In fact, the segment you did, I want to talk about it just for a second. It's called A Short Drink from a Certain Fountain. That was during the 5th season. It was one that there are certain episodes that really gave me goosebumps and really kind of horrified me, and that was one. Because, first of all, the character you played, she was no blushing,
she was a tart.
She was not nice. And you were great in that role.
Listen, the bad ladies, the tarts, the ladies with the hearts of gold and teeth to match, they are the ones that are the most fun to play. Let's not kid ourselves. Miss Goody Two-Shoes, which I've played, and the sweet little mothers and the blah blah, boring. But the tarts are great fun. And that episode was held up for some reason legally. I can't remember whether it was finances that were involved or what, but it didn't play for a long time. Please excuse me.
No.
And but I loved it and had so much fun playing it. And I played this lady that was young and cute and flashy and had a much older husband that she kept putting down, and because he didn't want to go dancing in the middle of the night. He didn't want to go drinking. And he takes a potion. He talks his brother, a scientist doctor, into giving him what he has discovered, a liquid that will make him younger, and he gets younger and younger and younger and younger, and I wind up having to take care of a baby if I want any of the millions that are in store.
And you did.
And I did.
And this is the comeuppance for the bad behavior, the abusive behavior. It was the perfect. I don't know how they thought of these, but in 22 minutes or whatever those episodes were, they brought you right in. You saw the problem, and then you saw this perfect solution that just gave you goosebumps. And yours was
great
so
writing.
good.
Just
great writing.
Great writing.
Buck Houghton, I think, was one of the. But I think yours was Rod Serling.
Rod Serling
and
was kind of the spokesperson for the show.
Amazing.
And he was so fabulous. I could have married Rod Serling, and I might have, had he not been a smoker from morning till night, one cigarette out, another one lit. I couldn't do dinner with him very often. I would meet him every once in a while if he was here, or if we were in New York doing something. I would meet up with him, and I just adored him, but couldn't stand the smoking. And he died very young, thanks to his frigging smoking.
Yeah, no, what a tragic loss. And the smoking is really notable. He seemed quite a chain smoker.
Yeah. Oh, he was.
And the other great one I have to talk with you about, I hope you don't mind, Witness for the Prosecution.
Oh, yes.
Agatha Christie's play, adopted for film, directed by Billy Wilder.
Yes.
And a top 10 film from AFI, which is the American Film Institute, top 10 film. And you were a part that wasn't in the play, and I'm dying to know something. Did they write that part for you?
I have no idea. They wouldn't have written it for me. They would have written it for somebody to play, because it's pivotal.
It becomes pivotal.
It's pivotal. But what's very interesting about it is there's this great story. Oh, I shouldn't tell this story. I should make you go buy my book, everybody, which is called Consider Your Ass Kissed. And I mean it, dear ones. I mean it. And I've got such fun stories to tell in it. But how I got that part was fascinating.
Yes.
I had never seen Frank Sinatra live. I was too young to see him in his heyday at the Paramount in New York, and when the teenagers were screaming and yelling and all of that for Frank. But I was sensitive enough to enjoy the beautiful, unrequited love songs that Frank Sinatra did better than anybody on the face of this earth. And so I heard the albums, and I was invited by a lovely gentleman that I didn't date, but he was a friend, with a group of his friends, to see Frank Sinatra when he opened at the Macombo.
Wow.
The Macombo was going broke. That was one of Ciro's, Macombo, Crescendo, were the three big nightclubs on the Sunset Strip that were all going broke because television had come in and everybody was watching everything on television and not going out to the clubs anymore to see, the performers. So Frank said, I'll come in and play a week. Dean will come in and play a week. Sammy will come in and play a week. Let's see if we can't get some business going. So I was invited to the opening of Frank Sinatra, and I'm sitting at a table right like this, and there are like maybe 10 or 12 of us, and we're right in the front. You can't even call it a row, because Frank stood on a tiny little dais, because his orchestra filled the stage. There's small stages, nightclub stages. And I'm sitting right under Frank Sinatra like this, watching him. Now, you have probably seen Frank.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that you've ever seen Frank live.
No, I haven't.
Nobody was as mesmerizing or ever will be as Frank Sinatra when he is performing. I mean, he didn't need extraordinary lighting and sets and tricks.
No.
He was just Frank, and he sang, and oh, God, he was wonderful. And I sat there with my mouth hanging open, And a gentleman sent a note via a waiter to my host saying, would I bring Miss Lee around to the table to meet him, that he'd like to meet me. So my my friend, the host, takes me over, and the gentleman says, I am Arthur Hornblow Jr., and I have been sitting almost behind Frank Sinatra because you were in front and we're sort of behind him. And I was watching you watch Frank Sinatra. And I am producing a film called Witness for the Prosecution. And I think you would make a very good love interest for Tyrone Power in my film, Witness for the Prosecution. Can you come in tomorrow and meet with Billy Wilder? And I thought, oh, God, is tomorrow too soon? Fabulous. So I go in and meet Billy Wilder. He puts me on film. Marlene Dietrich takes one look at the Rushes the next day and looks at me and says, Nick, 9, forget it.
No.
She's blonde. Like me, I became a brunette overnight. So Witness for the Prosecution, I have the dark hair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's how I got the job, right? Billy Wilder thinks fine. Fade out, fade in. It's now like 2 years later. And if anybody knows Frank Sinatra, they know that he likes nothing more than to have people over to his house, have a big Italian dinner, and to screen a new movie. And so, what's the movie they're screening that night?
Oh, no.
And his partner then in the movies is Howard Koch, for whom I'd worked many times, Warner Brothers across the street here.
Mm-hmm.
And they screen Witness for the Prosecution. And Frank turns to Howard and says, Howie, you know, I've been watching this Ruta Lee chick on television and stuff a lot. What do you think about putting her in one of our upcoming films? And he said, fabulous. I can't think of a better choice. That's how I got to be the leading lady of Sergeants 3.
Really?
Frank Sinatra to Sergeants 3. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, Peter Lawford, the Crosby Boys.
Yeah, a full rap
And
pack.
he never knew that he was responsible for my getting the film that got me his job.
Wow.
Isn't that a Hollywood story?
That is an iconic Hollywood story, and thank you, Frank Sinatra. Oh,
Yes.
there you are with the Rat Pack. They had
Yes.
some big- Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I mean, what an amazing film, because why I say that I wondered if they wrote it for you, because when I was watching the film again, I was captured by you. You were sitting in the gallery, like in the it was a court
Yes,
case.
a court case.
And you are in the
Old Bailey.
up in the gallery, like
gallery,
where the public sits. And I thought, at first I'm like, well, of course, that's so interesting they have her there because she's us watching this play, because it's not a play otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a play, so we're not in the audience to watch the court case like you would be in a theater, but instead they're having you be the audience.
Yes.
And so I kept thinking, wow, what an amazing choice by Billy Wilder to do this. And then boom, you have a pivot in the film that's amazing.
Yes.
I won't give it away.
We all had to sign secrecy pledges.
Oh yeah.
When we came into the movie, and when they screened the movie, it was a deal that the new audience was not allowed into the theater until the final scenes were drawn and shown, because it would be a terrible thing to see the ending rather than the beginning at first. I have something else to tell you that is interesting for anybody who's seeing Witness for the Prosecution, and please watch it because it does play quite often. It's a fabulous film.
Yeah.
The set of Old Bailey, which is the old London courthouse that exists, and Ronnie and I drove by it on the tour not a few months back, was built 3/4 to scale on the set at Goldwyn Studios.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
3/4 scale.
Wow.
It was amazing. And to work with Charles Laughton and Marlene Dietrich, Charles Laughton especially.
I couldn't imagine. He was amazing. He was the attorney who was so incredible. You were so drawn into his entire performance.
His performance is excellent, and what Billy Wilder pulled from everybody was just wonderful. You know, he just was able to say
genius.
what he wanted, and of course, what I just loved about wonderful Charles Laughton. When I came into the movie, the makeup crew, whom I knew all the guys because I'd been working for a while, you know, said, listen, you're not, just ignore Charles Laughton. He doesn't like young girls. He's a nasty old gay guy. He doesn't like young girls. Just do your work, leave him alone, and he's going to be fine. So I came into the set maybe 5 or 6 weeks after it had started, the movie. And everybody's sitting around in a little British tea circle, you know, Marlena and everybody are sitting over there and they're sipping tea and everybody's doing their thing. And nobody says to me, nobody says hello, nobody says welcome, nobody does anything. And for the first time in my life, I wish the floor would swallow me up, you know, just open up and swallow me because I didn't quite know what to do. And as I'm standing there, I get a whop on my backside, and I go flying across the room, and I turn around, and it's Charles Laughton. And he says, that's the best damned ass I've seen in a long time. And we became the best of friends. And Charles Laughton would pout if I didn't come in and say good morning to him before anybody else. And he taught me to play perquacky, and we did all kinds of games. And he and his wife, Elsa Lanchester, became great buddies, and they were so good to me. And they helped me stay on track with my middle British accent.
Oh,
very high British or
interesting.
Cockney is easy, but that middle English is a little bit tougher, you know. But oh God, they were great.
They were great. It's a tour de force, the film. I'm so glad you were a part of it.
Me too.
And you know, it's interesting. You just brought up something like, which is there was a movement that happened here in Hollywood, the whole Me Too movement, and you were. I mean, you navigated with the toughest of the tough. You swam with the sharks. You really were out there, and you didn't fold. I mean, you really navigated it. I mean, when I read these stories in your book, which is amazing. I'm sorry I didn't say that right up front.
Oh, thank you.
It's really amazing, and then you really realize this is someone who really can swim with the sharks. Even you're not a shark, but you didn't get eaten.
I didn't get eaten, and I came out whole in that I have a moral sense that I will never lose.
Right.
And I have a philanthropic sense that I think I must have been born with. I'm not sure. And I learned from everybody. And that doesn't mean that I didn't get chased around a desk by somebody, but mostly we wound up laughing it off. I would make it a joke instead of taking someone seriously or being offended. Oh, please, if someone wants to grab my boob, then all I can do is say, good luck, you know. Try and find it.
Which is so wonderful in the book. You make fun of yourself a few times, which is so lovely because it's like this is someone who takes themselves, you know, who laughs at themselves and takes themselves seriously. It's like you found the way to navigate through the world, which I thought was so lovely.
Well, you know, Greg, I have to tell you, I think that I owe a great deal to the gods of humor that inhabit heaven, because I find that laughing your way through the worst of it will see you through almost anything. If you can just find some way to just say, oh, knock it off, let's just laugh this thing through, you know, that it works. Humor helps a great deal.
It sure does, and it's one of the best coping mechanisms, so I'm so glad you said that. In fact, there's so much I want to talk with you about, but I have to talk with you about the Thalians.
Oh, Lord.
It's. I mean, this is a mental health podcast, but my goodness, it seems like you hold the keys to many answers. Just to how to navigate in a tough world, how to be a success, how to, you know, age beautifully because you look fantastic.
Thank you.
And
I'm 89 years old, and it used to be that I lied about how old I was. First of all, to be older. Then I started lying to be younger. Now I'm so friggin' proud that I'm alive that I'm happy to share it with everybody.
Well, you make it look incredible. So,
thank you.
Yeah. You co-founded the Thalians, which was Hollywood for mental health charity. One of the most notable accomplishments, Thalians, this is when I was coming up through training, everybody talked about Thalians. Thalians Mental Health Center at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in L.A., which provided services, treatment, research, and education. And it was so tragic that they ended Cedars, pulled the plug.
They found that mental health didn't bring in the kind of money that kidney or heart or lung did. And so they decided, they say they still have a mental health department, but it's not what it used to be.
No.
And so our allegiance and our focus as the Thalians, who have raised millions of dollars for mental health by doing big all-star events, went to people that really needed it, the young men and women who are willing to put their lives on the line for us every day, everywhere we send them, whatever hellhole we send them to in the military, and yet they sometimes come back home and fall through the cracks. So we joined up with UCLA,
yes,
and Operation Mend, and Operation Mend heals the broken and fractured bodies of these beautiful young people, and we Thalians try to heal the broken and fractured mind and spirit. And all I can do is say thank you to everybody that has ever supported us and the Thalians in any way, and whether you gave me $5 or $50 or $500,000, consider your ass kissed.
Well, thank you, because if it wasn't for your big part of this, like, it wouldn't be around still, you know?
Really?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, I mean, thank you for keeping the charity going and everything. Yeah.
Well, that's nice of you to say. We haven't been doing our great big all-star events because they're so costly. I mean, to go into a hotel, first of all, you're going to pay $100 a head for the meal. Never mind the wine or the things, and even if you get them donated, you've got corkage charges to pay. I understand. They also have to pay their dishwashers and the glass polishers, etc. But it's so expensive that even if you were charging $1,500 a plate, the charity was not making enough money to warrant, this kind of expenditure. So we're going to try again. And one of our founding members, along with Debbie and Hugh O'Brien.
Debbie Reynolds, yes.
Yeah, the fabulous Debbie Reynolds, my sister in charity and
yes.
my sister in everything.
Who you co-founded with, yeah.
Well, kind of. She was before me, but I did 60 years. We changed roles.
Incredible.
She was either president and I was chairman of the board, or she was chairman of the board and I was president. We did that for a lot of years. One of our founders was Jane Mansfield.
Yes.
Big. Now you know who that is?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, big boobs. That's why. Big-breasted Jane Mansfield, a darling lady, perfectly darling. Well, her talented, brilliant, wonderful actress daughter is Mariska Hargitay, and so we're hoping that we will have Mariska as our honoree. I mean, we've had Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis and Lucille Ball as honorees,
That Mr. and Mrs. Wonderful.
Yes, yeah. to get the Mr. She'd be the Ms. Wonderful Award. And how appropriate it would be that her mother was one of the founding members of the Thalians back in 1954.
Yes. No, it's done such incredible things for mental health, and it's really been a guiding light. Thank you so much for being a part of that.
Well, thank you for what you do. I mean, let's face it, without the guides along the way to kind of steer you into either therapy or treatment or thinking about facing the prospect of both or living through them, where would we be? I mean, things would exist, but it takes somebody to utz you into a position.
Well, perhaps. I appreciate that. Thank you. But, we can't do it. And the thing about mental health is so many people can't afford it. And that's what you provide. And that is that you provide the access to people to give money to these organizations that can then provide the services. So it's an incredible. It couldn't survive without.
Well,
that.
But it couldn't survive without people like your followers who give a damn about their fellow man and who reach into their pockets and their hearts to help somebody who can't help themselves. We Americans are a very generous people, and I just don't want our new generation to forget about that. I sort of feel like those of us who grew up knowing what vaudeville was and how tough work was and how tough getting a job was and how tough everything was will understand that you have to reach in and if you're asked, here's what happens. You ask someone of the new big stars, if you can get to the person, then you usually get a yes, I will come, I will perform, I will do. But you have to get through a phalanx of manager, agent, publicist, hairbender, all of this stuff that goes on. And you get no from everybody because nobody gets paid if they work for the Thalians. But we depend on these people to do it. So what I'm saying is, all of you young people out there who have careers in the making, don't forget to be generous and say thank you to the higher power by reaching in and giving your time, your energy, and some of your money to help people who can't help themselves.
What amazing advice, and what amazing advice not only for people who are starting out in their career, but for all of us. So thank you. That's amazing advice. Ruta, there's so much I could talk to you for another 2 hours, and I apologize, but unfortunately we need to end today.
Well, there comes a time, and that doesn't mean that you don't invite me and I don't come back. I mean, let's face it.
There's a lot to your book is so amazing. I invite people to get it.
Oh, yes.
It's on paperback, audiobook, and Kindle. It's called Consider Your Ass Kissed, an amazing title, which I love that you even have a story about the title in the book. It's in 2021. 4.5 stars on Amazon. So that means 4.5 out of 5. That means people love this book. 4.11 on Goodreads.
Wow.
Great reviews. I mean, let's face it.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm glad I came to see you today.
It's worth it to get it. And they have you have an audio book with you reading it too.
Yes.
I mean, everything's incredible.
That means the party's over.
The party's over. It's time to call it a day. Hey, Ruta, thank you. That does wrap up our show for today. Thank you. And, like, subscribe, and give us 5 stars, everyone. Go to my YouTube page, youtube.com/Dr. Greg. I do have Ruta's a link to get her book. I put a link to Amazon on there.
Good.
And then also some other things to your webpage, if that's okay.
Good. I'm delighted.
Because it's really wonderful. Just to go ahead and look at your expansive career. So thank you, Ruta Lee, for visiting us.
And I thank your listeners for their time.
Thank you so much. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, Tony, Ronnie, who's in the gallery, and especially from Ruta Lee, the incomparable, the incredible Ruta Lee. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.
Oh.